I never thought my marriage would collapse because of a suitcase. Not a late-night text, not whispers from a friend, just a beat-up, old suitcase hidden in the back of our garage. 17 years of marriage, 17 years of love, loyalty, and what I thought was trust, gone in an instant. My name is Daniel Carter, 42, a software engineer. I've spent the past 2 decades building a stable life, providing for my wife, Laura, and our 2 kids, Tyler, 16, and Emily, 14. Laura, 40, is a nurse, a woman I believe to be the heart of our home. Sweet, kind, and always reliable. At least, that's what I thought. It was a Saturday afternoon, the kind where nothing seemed out of the ordinary. I was cleaning the garage while Laura was at work. That's when I found it, a dusty, brown suitcase tucked behind the Christmas decorations. At first, I thought nothing of it. Just another forgotten piece of luggage. But when I unzipped it, my world collapsed. Inside were stacks of love letters, receipts from expensive hotels, and photographs of Laura wrapped around another man. Different years, different locations. One photo, she's in Paris. Another, Mexico. One from last year, taken in some luxury suite I never knew existed. My hand shook as I flipped through the receipts. Some dated back to 2007. 17 years. That's when I saw his name. Nathan Brooks, a police officer, her high school sweetheart. And the worst part, he wasn't just some old flame. He was my best friend. The confrontation. The moment Laura walked through the door that evening, I was waiting. "Hey, honey," she greeted, placing her keys on the counter. "What's for dinner?" I didn't answer. I simply tossed the suitcase onto the kitchen table. Her face turned pale. What is this?" she whispered, her voice trembling. I leaned forward, my pulse pounding. "That's exactly what I'd like to know, Laura. 17 years, with Nathan, my best friend?" She staggered back, covering her mouth. "Daniel, I can explain." Explain? My voice cracked. "You had an affair behind my back for almost 2 decades, and you want to explain?" Tears welled in her eyes, but I didn't care. Not anymore. I wasn't looking at the woman I loved. I was looking at a stranger. Then, she tried to play the victim. "I never meant for this to happen. Don't," I cut her off. "Don't give me that it just happened bullshit. You planned this. You lied. You lived 2 lives, Laura." That's when Tyler and Emily walked in. "Dad?" Tyler frowned. "What's going on?" Laura panicked, shaking her head. "Nothing, sweetheart. Just go upstairs, okay?" But my son wasn't stupid. He saw the suitcase. He saw my face. "Mom?" Emily's voice was soft, unsure. "Why is Dad so mad?" I turned to them, my chest tightening. "How do you tell your kids their mother has been cheating on their father for their entire lives? That their childhoods were built on lies?" Laura tried to move toward them, but I blocked her. "You tell them, Laura," I said coldly. "Tell them the truth." She was shaking now, trapped. She knew there was no way out. That's when the front door swung open. Nathan, dressed in uniform, smug, confident, like he owned the place. His eyes met mine, and in that moment, I saw everything. He thought he had won, but he had no idea what was coming next. Nathan stood in my doorway like he belonged there, like this was his home, his family. His police uniform was crisp, the badge on his chest gleaming under the ceiling light. His smirk? Infuriating. He wasn't sorry, not for the affair, not for betraying me, not for breaking up my family. Laura stood frozen between us, her eyes darting back and forth, but she wasn't crying anymore. She was terrified. Tyler and Emily were still in the room, watching, waiting for someone to say something. But no words could explain what was happening. Then Nathan spoke. "You should calm down, Danny," he said, stepping forward like he owned the place. Like I was the one who needed to calm down. Something inside me snapped. "You come into my house after screwing my wife for 17 years, and you tell me to calm down?" I took a step closer, my fists clenched. "You're a dead man, Nathan." His smirk widened. "You sure you want to do that?" That's when he reached into his belt and pulled out his gun. The twist, "You're under arrest." The room went dead silent. Tyler gasped. Emily grabbed my arm. And Laura's eyes widened in sheer horror. Nathan pointed the gun at my chest. And then, click, 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 click. I blinked. He wasn't pulling the trigger. He was holding up a pair of handcuffs. "You're under arrest, Danny," Nathan said casually. My brain short-circuited. "What the hell are you talking about?" Nathan flashed a grin. "For trespassing, theft, and threats of violence." Trespassing? Theft? What the hell was he? Then it hit me. The suitcase. I had found Laura's suitcase in my own garage, in my own house, and now Nathan was twisting it into a crime. I turned to Laura. Her face was white as a ghost. "Oh my God," I breathed. "This was the plan all along, wasn't it?" Laura flinched. "This isn't a mistake," I snarled. "This is your little backup plan. You and Nathan, how long have you been setting me up for this?" Nathan chuckled. "You think too much, Danny. You broke into Laura's personal belongings, and you made a threat. I've got all I need." Then I saw it, the security camera in the corner of the living room. I had no idea it was even there. Nathan followed my gaze and smirked. "That's right," he said. "I've got everything on video. You yelling, you threatening me. It's all there." I turned to Laura. "You let him do this?" Tears streamed down her face, but she didn't say a word, because she knew I was screwed. A trap years in the making. This wasn't just an affair, this was an ambush. Nathan had been planning this for years. I thought he was just screwing my wife, but no, he was destroying my life from the inside out, and I had walked right into his trap. "I'll give you two options, Danny," Nathan said. "Either you leave quietly, or I take you in." My mind was racing. If I got arrested, I'd lose everything. Nathan was a cop. I had no proof that the suitcase was in my garage. I had no idea what else they had planned for me. And then, as if to twist the knife deeper, Nathan turned to Tyler and Emily. "Kids," he said smoothly, "why don't you go to your rooms while I handle this with your dad?" Emily clutched my sleeve. "No, Daddy, please." Tyler stepped forward. "You're not arresting him." Nathan's eyes darkened. I said, "Go." And then, Laura did the unthinkable. She turned to our kids and said, "Listen to Nathan. Just go upstairs." My heart stopped. Emily burst into tears. Tyler looked at me in shock, but Laura didn't meet my eyes, because she knew she had officially chosen sides. I wasn't her husband anymore. I was the enemy, outnumbered, but not broken. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to think. I had to play this smart. If I attacked Nathan, I'd be arrested immediately. If I ran, I'd look guilty. I had one shot at getting out of this. So I straightened up, raised my hand slowly, and forced a smirk. "All right, officer. I'll leave." Nathan looked almost disappointed. He wanted me to fight. He wanted me to resist, but I wouldn't give him the satisfaction. I turned to my kids. "Tyler, Emily, I love you both." They stared at me, confused. Then I grabbed my keys and walked out the front door. Nathan followed, grinning like he'd won. But he had no idea what was coming next. I wasn't running. I was planning my revenge. And when I came back, I'd make them both pay. I drove through the night, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. Nathan thought he won. Laura thought she got away with it. But they didn't just cheat on me. They didn't just betray me. They tried to ruin my life. And for that, they were going to pay. Step 1: the weak link. I needed leverage. Nathan was a cop, a dirty one. A guy like him had skeletons buried deep. And if I wanted to take him down, I had to find his weakest link. I pulled over at a gas station, grabbed my phone, and made a call. A deep voice answered after 2 rings. "Danny, it's been a while. Aaron Carter, private investigator, ex-detective, and my best friend from college. I need a favor," I said, my voice tight. "And I need it fast." Aaron exhaled. "What are we dealing with?" "A dirty cop. Name's Nathan Scott." There was silence on the other end. Then a low chuckle. "Danny, do you know how many complaints that bastard has against him?" My pulse jumped. "Jackpot. You got proof?" I asked. "I've got names. People he's harassed. Evidence that went missing under his watch. Some real nasty shit." I clenched my jaw. "I need everything." Aaron hesitated. "This is dangerous, man. He's got friends in high places." I laughed bitterly. So did my wife. That didn't stop her from screwing him behind my back for 17 years. Silence. Then Aaron said, "Meet me in 2 hours." I hung up, my heart pounding. Nathan was about to learn a hard lesson. When you back a man into a corner, he comes out swinging. Step 2: setting the trap. By the time I met Aaron, he had a thick folder in his hands. "You're gonna love this," he said, tossing it onto the table. I flipped through it. Bribes, threats, evidence tampering, and then a name that stopped me cold. Laura Scott. My head snapped up. Why is Laura's name here? Aaron sighed. "She's not just his mistress, Danny. She's been covering for him." My stomach twisted. "How?" Aaron tapped the file. "Bank records. Nathan's been funneling money through fake accounts. Guess whose name is on one of them?" I flipped to the page and felt the blood drain from my face. Laura had been laundering money for Nathan. This wasn't just an affair. This was organized crime. And now, Now I had everything I needed to bury them both. Step 3: the final betrayal. I had one more move to make, one more knife to twist. I drove straight to my lawyer's office. Mark Reynolds, one of the most ruthless divorce attorneys in the state. I slammed the file onto his desk. I want everything. Mark raised an eyebrow. Everything? Full custody of my kids, the house, the cars. I want Laura to walk away with nothing. He flipped through the file and let out a low whistle. Danny, this isn't just a divorce case. This is a criminal case. Can you make it happen? Mark smirked. Oh, I can do a hell of a lot more than that. I leaned in. Then let's burn them down. Step 4: the setup. I sent Laura a text. Meet me at the house. We need to talk. She responded within seconds. I don't think that's a good idea. I smiled. She was scared. Good. You owe me this. A pause. Then, fine. I'll be there. I sat back. The bait was set. And Laura? She was about to walk into her own downfall. Step 5: the final play. That night, I stood in my own house, the house Laura and Nathan tried to steal from me, waiting. I wasn't alone. Aaron was upstairs. Mark was in the car outside. And I had cameras everywhere. Then, headlights flashed in the driveway. The front door creaked open, and Laura stepped inside. She looked different. Nervous, uneasy. She wore a hoodie instead of her usual expensive clothes. Her hair was pulled back, her face pale. Danny, she started, her voice shaking. What is this about? I crossed my arms. 17 years, Laura. Her eyes darted around the room. I know. I'm sorry. I made a mistake. I laughed. A mistake? You were screwing a cop while he was laundering money through you. Her face went white. I don't know what you're talking about. I stepped closer. You will. Then I reached into my pocket and tossed a stack of papers onto the table. Divorce papers. Criminal evidence. Everything. Laura's hands shook as she picked them up. Her breath hitched. Her eyes snapped up to mine. You wouldn't. I smiled. I already did. Then the front door burst open. Nathan. His face was red, his fists clenched. Danny, what the hell are you doing? I turned slowly. Oh, I don't know. Just exposing you for the criminal piece of shit you are. Nathan's hand twitched toward his belt. But before he could do anything, sirens blared outside. Flashing red and blue lights filled the windows. Nathan's face dropped. Then, the front door slammed open again. And this time, it was his own fellow officers. Chaos erupted. Nathan lunged for his gun. Bad move. The officers stormed in, guns drawn. Hands in the air. Don't move. Nathan froze, his face twisted in rage. You idiots. I'm one of you. One of the officers, a tall, broad guy named Detective Marcus Hayes, stepped forward. Not anymore. He slapped a pair of cuffs on Nathan's wrists, yanking his arms behind his back. Nathan thrashed. This is a setup. You know me, Marcus. This is bullshit. Marcus didn't even blink. We know exactly who you are, Scott. Nathan's jaw clenched. His eyes darted to Laura, who was standing there, paralyzed. Tears streamed down her face. Danny, please. I raised an eyebrow. Please what? She took a step toward me, her hands trembling. Please, tell them this is a mistake, that I didn't know. I laughed, a deep, bitter laugh that echoed through the house. 17 years, Laura. Her lips quivered. I swear, I didn't. 17 years of lying, stealing, cheating. You knew exactly what you were doing. I leaned in, my voice dropping to a whisper. And now you get to pay for it. She collapsed, right there on the floor. Nathan, on the other hand, wasn't done fighting. He turned to the officers. I want a lawyer. Marcus smirked. You're gonna need a whole damn team. Then he nodded at another officer. Take him in. Nathan struggled, cursing, yelling as they dragged him out the door. The moment the door slammed shut behind him, the silence in the room felt deafening. I turned back to Laura, still crumpled on the floor. She looked up at me, her mascara streaked, her hands gripping my pant leg. Danny, I'm begging you, please, don't let them take me too. I knelt down, looking her right in the eyes. You let Nathan take 17 years of my life. I think it's only fair I take a little something back. Then I stood up, turned to Marcus, and said 2 words. Arrest her. The downfall of Laura Scott. Laura screamed as the cuffs locked around her wrists. Danny, please, I'm your wife. I crossed my arms. Not anymore. She thrashed, tears spilling down her cheeks. I love you. I always have. Nathan meant nothing to me. I tilted my head. Funny, you didn't say that when you were screwing him in our bed. Laura sobbed. I made a mistake. A 17-year mistake. I scoffed. That's not a mistake, Laura. That's a choice. She gasped as Marcus pulled her toward the door. Her eyes locked onto mine, desperate. What about the kids? I felt a flicker of emotion in my chest. The kids, they were the only ones I still cared about in all of this. But I refused to let her use them against me. I pulled out another document from my pocket, the one Mark had drawn up. I held it up. Full custody. Her face shattered. No, she whispered. Yes. I stepped closer. The kids deserve better than a cheating, lying criminal for a mother. Marcus tugged her toward the door. Her screams grew louder. Danny, don't do this, please. I didn't move, didn't blink. I just watched as they took her away. The woman I had loved for 20 years. The woman who betrayed me, gone. But it wasn't over yet. Nathan and Laura were both arrested. But I wanted more, because this wasn't just about revenge anymore. This was about ruin. So I made a call. The press conference. The next morning, I stood outside the police department, reporters swarming me, cameras flashing, microphones shoved in my face. I took a deep breath. Then I spoke. For 17 years, my wife Laura Scott and Officer Nathan Scott engaged in a secret affair, built on lies, corruption, and crime. The crowd murmured. I continued. Nathan Scott abused his position as a police officer to commit multiple crimes. Bribery, evidence tampering, extortion. Gasps. More whispers. I pulled out the folder. The evidence. Here are the records proving it. And here, I held up the second folder. Here's the proof that Laura Scott helped him cover it all up. Flashes went off. One reporter stepped forward. Mr. Scott, are you saying your wife was involved in illegal activity? I nodded. Yes, and that's why she's in jail. The final blow. I walked away from the cameras, my heart still pounding. Then my phone buzzed. A message from my lawyer. Divorce finalized. Full custody granted. Assets frozen. I exhaled. It was done. Laura was finished. Nathan was finished. And me, I was finally free. The message that changed everything. I stood frozen, staring at my phone. You think you've won. You have no idea what's coming. The number was blocked. Nathan, I thought I destroyed him. I thought it was over. I was dead wrong. My hands clenched. What the hell did he mean? I had to find out. So I did what I always did. I prepared for war. 2 days later, the first attack. I woke up to a loud banging on my front door. Boom, boom, boom. It was 3 a.m. I grabbed the baseball bat I kept under my bed and crept toward the door, peered through the peephole. Nothing. I flipped on the porch light. Still nothing. I slowly unlocked the door, bat raised, and pulled it open. And that's when I saw it. A dead rat. A huge, bloated, rotting rat with a knife buried into its skull. My stomach turned. There was a note attached to it. I ripped it off, unfolding it with shaky hands. Checkmate. Nathan's last game. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my home office, going over everything again. Nathan was in jail. Laura was in jail. How was he still doing this? Then it hit me. Nathan wasn't working alone. He had help, and I had a damn good idea who it was. The dirty cop. I showed up at Detective Marcus Hayes' office the next morning. Slammed the rat note on his desk. Nathan sent this. Marcus frowned. That's impossible. He's in maximum security. I leaned in. Then how did he send me a dead rat with a note? Marcus exhaled sharply. He has connections, even behind bars. My fists clenched. Who? He didn't answer. So I asked the real question. Who else is dirty? His eyes flickered, just for a second. But it was enough. I knew. The traitor, Detective Eric Wallace, Nathan's old partner, and my so-called friend. I'd known Wallace for over a decade. He was at my wedding. He knew my kids. And he was helping Nathan get revenge. I tailed him that night. Waited outside a shady-looking bar downtown, watching as he slipped inside. I followed. Wallace was at a corner booth, talking low into his phone. I got close enough to hear. Yeah, he got the rat. He's pissed. My blood boiled. He chuckled. Nah, he has no idea it's me. I clenched my jaw. Oh, I know. I walked up, slammed my hands on the table. His eyes shot up. Danny? I leaned in, voice low. How much is Nathan paying you? He stiffened. I smirked. Let me guess, dirty money, smuggled drugs, maybe a little evidence tampering to help him walk free? His face paled. I hit the mark. I pulled out my phone, pressed record. Say hi to the camera, Wallace. The takedown. The next morning, I handed the recording to Marcus. You have everything you need. Arrest him. Marcus hesitated. I stepped closer. If you don't, I will. His lips pressed into a thin line. Then he nodded. 2 days later, Nathan's last mistake. Wallace was arrested. Nathan was furious. And now, he had nothing left. So he did the dumbest thing possible. He escaped. During transport, Nathan faked a medical emergency and overpowered a guard, stole a gun, hijacked a car, and vanished. The entire city was on lockdown. Every officer was looking for him, but I already knew where he was going. The final confrontation. I was waiting in my living room, gun in hand, and then, boom, 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 the pounding on my door again. I exhaled. I walked to the door, opened it, and there he was. Nathan, sweaty, blooded, wilded, gun in hand. You ruined my life. I didn't flinch. You ruined mine first. He stepped inside, slamming the door shut behind him. You think this is over, he growled. You think you win? I lifted my gun. I know I do. He sneered. You won't shoot me. You're not a killer. I smirked. You sure about that? His eyes flickered. For the first time, Nathan was scared. The final shot. The police sirens wailed outside. Nathan's head snapped toward the window. That was his mistake. I didn't hesitate. Bang. One shot, right to the leg. Nathan collapsed, screaming. The door burst open. Marcus and his team flooded in, guns drawn. Nathan thrashed. He shot me. Marcus grabbed him by the collar. You're done, Scott. Nathan howled as they dragged him out. I stood there, exhaling. It was finally over. 1 month later, the true aftermath. Nathan was locked away for life. Wallace, gone. Laura, facing 20 years behind bars. Me, I walked away. With full custody of my kids. With my house. With my freedom. And for the first time in 17 years. I was happy, but before I could close this chapter completely, I made one last visit. The prison visit. Laura's last words. I sat across from Laura in the prison visitation room. She looked older, defeated. She picked up the phone. Her voice was barely a whisper. Do you hate me? I thought about it. Then I shook my head. No. She swallowed hard. Do you still love me? I leaned in, met her eyes, and whispered the last words I would ever say to her. I don't think about you at all. Her face crumbled. I stood up, walked away, and never looked back. The final line. As I stepped outside into the sunlight, I took a deep breath. 17 years. Gone. But I had my future, and I was finally free.